Look at this, buddy.
We're in the same room.
First time. I don't know how many episodes we're in now. 75, 76, something like that. This is the first time we've been in the same room. Welcome, everybody, to the Walk-Off. I'm Scott Belford, joined right in the same room as Adam Mack currently. We're in Calgary for the Craft Island Comedy Festival. So if you are a Calgarian and looking for something to do this weekend, come check out some shows. In the meantime, lots to talk about on the walk-off today. The Blue Jays continue to be hot and look for that wild card spot. We'll get into that. We'll talk about Salvador Perez and the crazy season he's having as the catcher for the Kansas City Royals. We'll get into the Shohei Vladdy talk. And of course, I want to talk Robbie Ray and his slider, so we'll get into that. And if you missed it, we did wind up sitting down with Pat Hankin, former Cy Young winner with the Toronto Blue Jays in 96. Of course, he has 2 World Series rings with that 92 and 93 team. And my goodness, man, like...
So cool.
It was so cool. It was so surreal, right? Like, This is a guy that we grew up, like, Adam and I were, you know, this is what made us baseball fans. Was guys like Pat Hankin, and to sit down and talk with him. So that is actually up on YouTube right now. It's up on our platforms for wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Google, Apple, all that good stuff. So you can check that out. And we've been doing mailbags lately where we kind of go over the podcast's comments from YouTube. People who reach out on Twitter, which is @WalkOffPodcast. Or on Instagram, the Walk-Off Podcast. And you can also join our Discord, which is actually growing every single day. It's a free Discord, so you can get in there and kind of shoot the shit about the game while things are going on. When we're not live streaming, we do live stream every single Tuesday. Of course, those live streams are brought to you by YourRate.ca. Darren Brown, the mortgage broker, sure to get you into that mortgage you're after, whether you're looking for a new mortgage or to redo your current one. YourRate.ca is going to help you out.
You're so good at that, Scott. I always thought you were just reading a script.
Mm-hmm.
But I see now that you're just very well prepared.
See, the curtain has been pulled aside and all my
Even
magic
I'm getting
tricks.
a behind-the-scenes view right now. This is great. All right, let's talk Blue Jays.
Okay, let's get into this because this team, 82 and 64, there's 18 games to go. We're down to it, man, the nitty-gritty.
We have a shot at 100 wins this year. Just saying.
Just if they go 18-0, 100 wins.
Hey, I did not think we were going to take 2 out of 3 against the Rays.
I mean, huge statement series for this Blue Jays team. And while we're talking statements, that Manoah start was a statement. That Ray start was a statement. These are guys that went out and pitched their asses off for this team. And the offense listened. Yep. The offense actually was on board with them this time, grabbing 2 out of 3 against the Tampa Bay Rays, a team that, I mean, if all goes well and this Jays team does get into the wild card, and then knock on wood, fingers crossed, they move on.
That's who's waiting for us.
That's who's waiting for us.
The loss we did have, the 2-0 game, how concerned are you that we can't? Like, when the bats are hot, we're hot. That's no question. If we're in a shootout, we can beat any team in the league, right? Mm-hmm. We can win any game 14-10. It's, you know what? 2-1 games.
I'm not worried, no. And I don't mean to be dismissive of that problem because it is a problem with the Jays sometimes, so the bats just do not respond. And not to be like trite about it, but baseball. It's baseball, right? Like sometimes you just are going to not put up runs. I mean, that 2-0 loss. Who was pitching that game? Was that Berrios? That was Berrios. And he pitched a gem too. Yeah. 7 innings, 1 earned run.
Very well.
Like they just.
So the plan is to just beat the Rays 3-1 and outscore them 50-2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If we see them in the ALDS,
that's the plan.
We win 3-2, lose 2-0, win 1-0. You know, like this is the way it's going to go. It's not going to be very high output offensively. There'll be one game. There'll be one game that the Jays win 12-11 or something ridiculous like that. Right. Because the Tampa Bay Rays do score runs. They've got the best run differential in the American League. And I wish I would have grabbed the stats, but the way they're doing it, it is absolutely insane. You know, like they're stealing bases. Mm-hmm. They are hitting with, I think it was with runners in scoring position, they're the number one team in all of baseball.
Wow.
Both American and National League. I'd need to double check on that, but they are just a juggernaut of a team. And definitely, in my opinion, that's who you're going to need to beat in the American League, not to take anything away from the Chicago White Sox and the Houston Astros, who are also very, very good teams.
Other than the shift, it's like the Rays play baseball the way baseball should be played.
Yeah.
Right? Offensively, you know.
They have the fewest errors in baseball. Like, they're just so defensively sound, and they just get so much out of their players. I wish I could pinpoint exactly what it is. But I mean, there's 29 other organizations who also are like, if only we could pinpoint exactly what the Rays are doing right.
If you figure it out, you've got a job with somebody.
Exactly. If anyone who's listening right now, if you figure it out, you get on the phone. So, and this, I do wish to get into this wild card scenario because it is exactly that, wild.
So this is a potential three-way tie for 2 wild card spots.
And I mean, and this is what it's all shaping up for right now. I don't think it's going to happen. We're 18 games out, but currently, if you look at the standings, it's the Jays and the Red Sox tied for that first wild card spot, and the Yankees losing last night to the Orioles in the 10th. Goodness, Baltimore is doing a great job of being a spoiler. I love to see it. They are honestly so excited to do it too. It's cool to see that youth and enthusiasm in that team.
Side note on the Orioles, my wife saw the Orioles, and I heard her say the team name for the first time.
Yeah.
And she pronounced it the Orioles.
Oh,
and I just loved it. I don't know. But every time I hear Baltimore now, I'm thinking Orioles. So.
The Baltimore Orioles.
It's very delicate.
So regal.
Yes.
So in this scenario of all 3 teams finishing in a tie for the wild card, wait till we start to break down how this looks. Let me just see if I can find it here.
So this would be contingent on all 3 teams at the end of the year all having the exact same record. Mm-hmm. Correct?
That is correct.
So there would be tiebreakers between the teams based on how they performed against each other, right? The Red Sox have a better record against the Jays and the Yankees. The Jays have a better record against the Yankees.
Which would in turn mean that the first elimination game for the first wild card spot would be between the Jays and the Red Sox at Fenway, because Boston has the better win record against the Blue Jays in their season series. Whoever wins that gets that first wild card spot. The loser, so if the Jays lose, they then go to New York. Now, because the Jays have a better record than New York, I know some of you are like, well, why isn't that playoff game for Toronto? But it's because it goes on win percentage, and the fact that they lost to Boston in game 163, all of a sudden their win percentage is lower, and now they go to New York. But this is really interesting, and this was Arden Zwelling that brought it up. So the one wrinkle in this whole tiebreaker scenario is that if the Blue Jays exercise their option to forego playing Boston for the first wildcard game, which is something I didn't even know was a thing. So Toronto can actually be like, you know what? We don't wish to play Boston for the first wildcard spot. We'll wait and see what happens between New York and Boston. And then that wildcard elimination game would be in Toronto to see who moves on to the wildcard game.
It would be an extra day of rest. It would be less travel.
And you're playing at home.
But you're also going against the baseball gods.
Mm-hmm. So this is interesting, and I want to know how you feel about this. Personally, I'm just like, yeah, you play Boston at Fenway, and then if you lose there, you go to New York. You want to give yourself 2 chances. And also, if you win that first wild card game, then you have a home game for your wild card.
You still get that extra day rest. I wouldn't push my luck, and try and outsmart myself. I'm not scared of Boston.
No,
I mean, especially in Fenway, this Jays team, I feel like is going to have no problem hitting in that ballpark. Either ballpark, I think Jays are going to have no problem putting up offense. Yeah, I say let's go to Boston and let's just get it out of the way. What do you think?
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think so too. It should be interesting. I don't think that this tiebreaker scenario is going to happen again. We're 18 games out from the end of the season, and if the Blue Jays proved anything, is that in 18 games, the whole world can change. Yeah. Like, they are, what are they, 16-2 right now? 15-2, something like that in their last 17. Like, they have just been world beaters. And what I loved seeing over the last couple weeks is that the American media is starting to pay attention, man. Like, the American sports writers are all of a sudden starting to get on board with the Blue Jays and starting to say things like, this team might be the best team in the American League other than the Rays. This team...
Well, taking 2 out of 3 versus the Rays, I think, doesn't make us better than the Rays in the power rankings or anything like that, but it definitely shows that, like, okay, this Jays team isn't just beating up on the Orioles and Tigers, right?
Yeah.
We didn't just catch the Yankees when they were down.
In fact, if anything, we're losing games to the Tigers and the Orioles. Exactly. And then, like, the fact that the way that they have gotten to this position that they're in, where their fate is in their own hands, which was not something I thought was possible 2 weeks ago. Bottom line, I just didn't think it was possible 2 weeks ago.
How amazing is this? We're watching meaningful baseball in September. It is the 17th,
and they're right in it. Right in it. And they've got that first wild card spot right now in a tie with Boston. Yeah, it's really, really impressive. And it's cool to see these other organizations speaking up and being like, wow, the Blue Jays are not just going to be an incredible team. They are an incredible team. Yeah. So when we start looking at what's going on here and the consequences of where this team is, and you got to start thinking about a playoff roster, there are some decisions to be made here. I did wish to bring up Kevin Bisgio. Listen, Kevin Bisgio has had a really rough season. We've talked about him lots. He just hasn't had the same plate discipline that he has been known for over his last couple of years. He has been striking out more. He has been laboring because he's been injured so much, and being forced to play third base, it's kind of been exposed as a poor fielder, which has never been his MO. He's always been an average fielder that can move anywhere, right? He's great at second. He can play first base. He can play every position in the outfield, and he can do it at an average level. But he has really been exposed at third base. However, he has improved. And it's not like Jake Lamb or Kevin Smith. You know, Santiago Espinal obviously deserves a spot on the team if he's healthy.
Right.
So my question is, if you're making this playoff roster, and Bisgio has been improving so much, like he has really been putting up some big numbers with the Bisons in the last week. Now, he was struggling in those first 3 weeks of rehab, where you're like, this guy was a major league player. How is he struggling so much in AAA? But you know what? I honestly believe that it was building his strength back up because he had all that crap in his neck and his back, which just affects everything. And we've talked about this before too, right? So do you, watching Bisgio starting to perform like he has in the past and knowing what a huge impact it is in this clubhouse for him to return, and it is. This is a team that, if you look at this core of Lourdes Gurriel and Vladdy Guerrero and Bo Bichette and Jordan Romano, all of these guys we just met, Taylor Sacedo even though I know he's not the core, but these are all guys on this Jays team that won that 2018 AA championship with the New Fisher. I always do that. I can't help myself.
New Fisher Orioles.
Yeah. The New Hampshire Fisher Cats. Do you bring him back even just because he fits so well with those guys? Or do you go specifically, you don't think he's good enough at third, and you bring Jake Lamb on the playoff roster?
Well, if it's between Jake Lamb, Kevin Smith, and Kevin Bisgio, if Biggio's good to go,
right?
I go with Bisgio.
Yeah, me
sure.
too. I feel
even
like
if he's at like 90%, let's go with Bisgio.
And because the way I look at it, there's going to be 2 spots for the 4 of them.
Okay.
And I think it's got to go to Espinal and Bisgio, right?
If Espinal's healthy and
if they're both
and
healthy,
good to go,
yeah,
than for sure Espinal.
I mean, that's the truth. Is Jake Lamb was picked up off the waiver wire out of a desperation move.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, good little pickup.
Mm-hmm.
But...
Well, the value, too, in bringing Bisgio back is whether he has a role with this team for the next 10 years or not. There's an opportunity to showcase Kevin Bisgio potentially for an off-season move, right? Like if we are going to make a play at Jose Ramirez or whoever the case may be, right? At least he's got a little bit of a track record. We can say this was a bad year, but hey, look how good he did in playoffs. Like he's potentially a guy who can hit 500 through 2 rounds of the playoffs, right?
Yeah, he is a guy who, when his plate discipline is on and he's in the hot spot, he's a great little hitter. And he's a good mix from what this roster looks like. You know, like he's a guy that puts the ball in play. He's a guy that takes his walks, whereas this team tends to be, you know, a little bit more free swing and power hitting, doubles and gap type of power, whereas Bisgio's a little bit more, you know, hitting some doubles, hitting some singles, getting on base. Not a bad guy to have in that 8-hole, that 9-hole.
Kevin Bisgio really just needs to learn how to bunt. Like I feel like that's the one like small ball aspect of his game that he doesn't have. Mm-hmm. He's a smart base runner. You know, he's not the fastest guy, but
nope.
He knows how to steal a base.
Yeah, until this year, he was 20 for 20.
Yeah, in his career. Yeah, I would like to see him back. It is interesting, though, like the timing of him getting hot. I know I was talking with a friend of the show, Trevor Freeman, about this. Do you think that he realized once the team was in contention that, like, oh, shit, I better start taking this rehab seriously? Because, 4 weeks ago when he started his rehab stint, it looked like the season maybe is over. And, like, wow, let's just phone it in for the rest of the year.
And that's a really good point. And I don't think that anyone on that Blue Jays team had written the season off.
No.
But if you go back a month and look at the standings and you're sitting 6 games out of that wild card spot and you're like, ugh.
Like if you're a guy who's already injured and just in pain, like, how much do I really want to push this? Just, this late in the year kind of a thing, right? But then all of a sudden the team gets hot and you're like, oh, this season doesn't end on October 1st,
I think it has motivated him. And I think you're starting to see that in the results too. And then the other question about this playoff roster is you're not bringing 5 starters.
No.
So who's going to the bullpen? Robbie Ray, Jose Barrios, and Hyun-Jin Ryu, I think a foregone conclusion that all 3 of them are going to be on this playoff roster as starters. And I know there might be some people there that are like, Ryu, he's our worst guy. He's not. He's not. You want that seasoned vet on the team. You want a guy who has been there before. I mean, he did come from the Los Angeles Dodgers, an organization that has been a juggernaut for years. Mm-hmm. So it's between Manoah and Matz, and there's a couple ways to look at this. Listen, both guys have had amazing seasons. Manoah just against the Rays there had maybe his best start of his career. 8 innings, 1 hit, 10 strikeouts. Dominant performance. Now that said, Steven Matz since the All-Star break has been one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball. And I mean, I've got the numbers here. Since August 1st, Alek Manoah has pitched 45 2/3 inning, which is amazing.
Okay.
He's getting his innings in there. He's got a 4.34 ERA because he has had, and this is the thing with Manoah, right? He will shut a team down, but he's still young and he still has those organizations that have a game against him where they pick something up and he just can't adjust and he winds up going 4 2/3 inning and giving up 5 runs. He never gets blown out, but he's a guy that just, his ERA is a little higher because he does have 1 out of every 4 games where he is giving up 5 runs in 4 innings, right? But if you look at Manoah's K rate, he's striking out almost 25% of the batters he's facing, which is, I mean, that's elite.
Mm-hmm.
That is a very impressive stat. And then he's walking 8%. So Steven Matz, since August 1st, has pitched 44 and 2/3 innings. So again, I just want to reiterate like how impressive that is that both of these guys, this is the 4 and 5 starter in this rotation right now. Look at the innings they have pitched in the last 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is wild. They're going out there and each of them are pitching 6 to 7 innings every game.
Yeah, I mean, if you're pitching into the 7th inning nowadays, that's almost a complete game.
It really is.
Relative to
It
the
really
last
is.
20 years.
So Matt's ERA since August 1st, 2.42, which is phenomenal. Strikeout rate of 20%, walk rate of 7. Great walk rate. 7% walk rate. So here's where I'm at.
Okay.
Personally, I think if you just break down each of their stuff, Alek Manoah's stuff is going to play up more in the bullpen than Steven Matz will.
Okay.
I think even Matz as a long man doesn't play as well as Manoah.
Mm-hmm.
I think Manoah's stuff is going to increase if he's just concentrating on one inning at a time. So all of a sudden that 96-mile-an-hour fastball is 98. He can go in there and just eliminate a couple pitches from his repertoire. Instead of having 4 pitches, he's going with his slider and his fastball. His slider has been incredible. And as for Matz, and we were talking about this, you know, like you even said it. You're like, if you're going to tell me somebody got blown up between the two of them, I think it's Matz. And it probably would be Matz. But also, if you're going to go the other way and be like somebody pitches
a 9 shutout inning game.
Yeah.
It was probably Manoah. I don't know, Scott. I don't know what the right answer is.
This is a decision that will need to be made by this front office, though.
The more I think about it, the more I feel like I would want to have Manoah in the bullpen just as a be ready to come in the second inning kind of a guy. Like, especially, like, Ryu scares me a little bit more than anybody else in our rotation.
I know.
Just of a guy who, like, doesn't have it today.
Yeah.
So I just feel like maybe on the Ryu start, you talk to Manoah and you go, hey, be ready, buddy.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and that's the thing is maybe they don't give Ryu the kind of rope that they've been giving him. Because if you look at Ryu's numbers through the first 2 times through the batting order, he's great.
Yeah.
It's that he gets hit so hard after that, through that 3rd time through the order. So I think that Alek Manoah also might go to the bullpen over Matz for no other reason than he's a rookie. This is the first time he's been in a 162 game season. He was called up in June. He's pitched a lot of innings.
So you think inning management?
It might be an inning management decision too, where they're just like, let's play it safe. His stuff probably plays up better than Matt's in the bullpen, and we're limiting his innings.
Yeah. No, that's a good thing. I do think that just going back to Ryu, if we are going to shorten our rotation, you know, he's pretty particular about how many days of rest he gets. So, you know, first time through the rotation, it's fine, but, you know, by the second time through, do we got to get creative and maybe give Manoah a start just to help push back the Ryu outing?
Man, a wild card game is going to be so nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Needing to watch Charlie manage these pitchers, it's going to be just...
I heard there's rumors going around of Charlie Montoyo for manager of the year.
Yeah. Try and get rid of him. Try to get rid of him now. This is what a hot streak will do for you. I don't know if everyone here is a hockey fan, but I do remember very well 2006 when the Edmonton Oilers went to the Stanley Cup Finals. And they barely got into the playoffs that year. And Kevin Lowe was on the hot seat to be fired. And then Kevin Lowe is still in the Edmonton Oilers organization after that run. So like, is Charlie Montoya just being given all this leash? Like,
Blue Jay for life at this point.
Yeah, exactly. I don't mind. I'm fine. Listen, and we've talked about this. It's not like we dislike Charlie. It's just he has made some decisions that every manager fans love to question. Yeah. Right? And Montoya has cost this team some games. But has he won them some games? Probably, right? Like, not every decision is a bad decision. Like, we've talked about the things that he's done well. And he's been really good the last 17 games. Played with more urgency, taken guys out a little sooner, given less rope, gone to Romano 2-3 times in a row, right? Stuff that was never happening in June and July. While we were talking about sliders, because I did mention how Manoah's fastball and slider would really play up. He could eliminate a couple pitches in the bullpen. Right. But Robbie Ray, I mean, we can't stop talking about this man because he is just having one of the most incredible breakout seasons that we've seen a pitcher in a Jays uniform have. This is a guy that very likely could win the Cy Young Award. He's been the best, if not a top 2 pitcher in the American League all year long. Big time strikeouts. And a lot of these Ks are coming off his slider. And he is such an anomaly because Robbie Ray truly is a 2-pitch pitcher. He's a slider and a fastball guy. And this is normally something that you would see out of a bullpen. You don't see it very often out of starters because batters are just really able to dial in on one pitch. But what Robbie Ray has going for him, and I just noticed this recently, is that his slider drops so much less than most guys' slider. Like, a lot of guys' sliders will tail off at the end and drop 6 to 8 inches. Like, Robbie Ray's doesn't even drop 6 inches. It's like a 4-inch drop in comparison to his fastball. So it is almost impossible for these hitters, and he throws the slider so hard. His slider's coming in there at 91, 92 miles an hour. It is almost impossible for these hitters to distinguish whether it's a fastball or a slider. And by the time they know, that 4-inch drop happens, and now they're just swinging through it.
Yeah, it's still the fact that someone could throw a round baseball and make it move.
Yeah.
Like, I've been trying to figure out how that works since I was 12 years old. So,
yeah, well, we'd probably be in the show and not doing a podcast if we knew how to do that, buddy. Another thing I did want to touch on too, and we brought it up last week, but Adam Cimber continues to be just a godsend for this Blue Jays bullpen. This is a guy that just gets brought in the most high leverage situations. If there's men on base, he's the guy Charlie's going to, and with great success.
Adam Cimber or Romano, who's our better reliever right now?
I mean, in all honesty, if we're in the 9th, I want to go to Romano.
Why?
Because I'm an old man. Yeah. Because baseball has told me this is the way you do things my whole life. You know, like I do think it will be situational. I think that it is possible that maybe we see Cimber and Romano switch back and forth depending on what's going on.
Yeah, I feel like the romance of it is that Romano is the closer, and that's just how it is. But I also feel like
Romano also throws 100 miles an hour.
I know, and there's definitely some purity to just having a fireball 100 mile an hour as opposed to a gimmicky, maybe submarine pitcher who just like gets it done. But
that said, the Blue Jays front office is in love with analytics, and I cannot see a scenario where Charlie, given a certain situation, wouldn't go to either of them, right? So let's say it's the top of the order, and the guys at the top of the order hit breaking balls really well. You go to Romano, right? Because Cimber's topping out at 90. Like, Cimber's not... Like, Cimber is all about deception. He throws from way under, submarine pitcher. He's got that his changeup just is filthy.
Yeah. I'm less worried about Cimber giving up 2 home runs, I guess is what it comes down to for me. Mm-hmm. Like, Romano can come in and get strikeouts, but in doing so, and you mentioned throwing 100 miles an hour... You just put bat on ball it's going over the fence, right? Just the.
And we've talked about this too before, that if you give Romano a little rope, he's going to use
it all.
Yeah, he's going to use it all. And Simber is a ground ball guy. So, and I think that's one of the reasons why they were so into getting him when he was available from the Marlins, is because they were leaving guys on base and had no one to go to in that pen, right? And so Simber's really kind of fulfilled a need that was being ignored before he joined this team, and now they do have a guy that they can go to out of that bullpen in the 7th inning or 8th inning when their starter all of a sudden has a guy on first and a guy on second. They need 2 outs, right?
It's a good problem to have. We finally have relievers that we are excited about.
Yeah, no, it's true.
So-
It's true. Trevor Richards comes out of that bullpen, and I'm like, all right,
Like
good.
I definitely don't think that the bullpen is a strength of this team.
No.
but it's also not an anchor dragging us down into the depths. like it was at points
It was.
in the
There
year,
were
right?
points where it was literally sinking this Toronto Blue Jays ship. Absolutely. Did you have anything else Blue Jays to touch on here?
It's just cool that we have someone in the race for MVP. It's cool that we have someone in the race for Cy Young. It's cool that we have a team in the race for playoffs. I'm annoyed at the thought of Charlie Montoya winning Manager of the Year, but I guess that's kind of cool too.
Yeah. So do you think with Shohei Ohtani, I know he was just scratched for his start here, and I think he's going to pitch, if at all, very, very limited for the rest of the year. The Angels are completely out of a playoff position. They want to protect their top asset in Shohei Ohtani, so it looks like he's going to probably DH the rest of the year, maybe play a little in the outfield. Do you think this affects his MVP chances? I think that there are more and more baseball writers that will vote Vladdy. I think with Vladdy chasing this Triple Crown and the way things are shaping up, that maybe the heat behind Ohtani is diminishing a little bit. I mean, if I'm going to bet my money, I'm taking Scott's money, and I'm putting it on Shohei. But, I mean, my heart is for Vladdy, and it is cool to see baseball writers starting to be like, maybe it won't be a blowout. Maybe it won't be 80% people think Shohei should win. Maybe it'll be a 40-60, 45-55.
I think there's still 2.5 weeks left, and I think that if both guys continue, even with Ohtani, if he gets shut down as a pitcher for the rest of the year, he's still going to be DHing. He's still going to be hitting home runs.
He's at 44 home runs. He very well could hit 50. And that's the thing, is if he hits 50, it's pretty tough to...
What I would say, as far as advantage Vladdy, just with the news of him not pitching anymore, is that's 3 less times this year that we're going to hear a story of Ohtani striking out 10 and hitting 2 home runs.
Yes.
Right? And just the way recency bias goes, that might help.
Agreed.
Having it have been a month since we heard of a dominant pitching performance in a game in which he also has 7 RBIs.
Yeah.
Right? Guys forget about that kind of stuff. So even if he hits 4 home runs over the next 14 days or however many games are left, now he's just a guy.
Yeah.
Right? Now he's just George Springer. Which, you still need, that's still valuable.
Yeah, for sure.
But, if Vladdy continues to play great defense at first, he continues to hit the way he's been hitting.
If the Jays make the playoffs, that I think is also a little bit of a caveat for Vladdy.
Yeah.
Baseball writers love...
Yeah, there's no reason to watch the Angels anymore.
Yeah.
Because now Ohtani is just a guy. For the next 3 weeks, he's just a guy.
And baseball has always leaned towards voting for the most valuable player who helps their team get into the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's
definitely a factor.
It is definitely a factor. Mike Trout would have almost every single MVP of the last 10 years if it wasn't that way, right? If the Angels weren't so bad, think about how much hardware Mike Trout would be taking in.
No, that's a great point.
But we talk about this every cast, so
I'm sure most podcasts talk about this every cast.
And we'll move along here, but I know next week we'll dive into this again, I'm sure. Before we wrap things up, I do have two more pieces of stuff MLB stuff I wish to talk about. I did wish to touch on Salvador Perez for the Kansas City Royals. This man is doing things that are absolutely earth-shattering in the catching world. He just hit his 45th home run last night, which is the most home runs ever by a catcher.
Who had the record before? Was it
Johnny Bench?
Johnny
Bench with the Reds. Yeah, we're talking Hall of Famer, right? Like this is
more than Mike Piazza, more than Ivan Rodriguez.
Like think about that. Think about the elite catchers, Joe Mauer. Like these are guys that like Hall of Fame catchers and Salvador Perez. And this is the thing too with old Salvi. Is we were just joking about it before we turned it on. Like I was like, let's talk about Salvador Perez, and Adam was like, he's what, like 40?
I wasn't even joking. No, he's like what, 38, 40? Like he's Nelson Cruz in my mind.
Yeah, he's 31. But he's just been in this league for so long. Yeah. And has been a big performer for this Kansas City Royals since they brought him up in his teens. I think Salvador Perez is a good example of a front office evaluating talent, recognizing the clubhouse boost, I guess. Okay. You know, like the leadership that he brings to the table, and that they thought, you know, like he'd been injured last year was the 60-game season, then he was injured a lot of 2019, so everyone kind of forgot about Salvador Perez, and then all of a sudden in the offseason, the announcement came out that the Kansas City Royals signed him for 4 years, $80 million, and even I at the time was like, wow, that's a lot of money to give Perez, like, that's wild, and now you look at this season he's having, and you're like, it's what the Jays did with Russell Martin in their stretch there, 2015-16. You know, like it's very impressive that Kansas City front office was able to.
How's his defensive skills as a catcher?
He's one of the best catchers.
So why aren't the Jays adding Salvador Perez this offseason?
Yeah. Oh man. That said, let's talk for 1 second here. Danny Jansen has been impressive. I mean, we haven't seen much of him. Kirk is looking really good. The Jays' catching position in the last 6 weeks is along with the bullpen, has been it's one of the reasons it has moved this needle to a playoff team, right? Like, they were some of the biggest holes in this roster, and it seems like they have just shored it right up, which is great to see. Yep. Before we leave, Adam brought something up to me that I was just like, this is really fun. We got to bring this up and talk about this. Obviously, this will never happen. But with Shohei Ohtani being a pitcher, Adam was like, can the DH spot be any position? Or does it have to be the pitching position? Now, it does have to be the pitching position, but what an interesting idea of a rule. Now that we're seeing this unicorn in Shohei Ohtani, think about how much Ohtani's value would move up if you could slide that DH spot to a different position.
Yeah, like if we had Ohtani on our team, and the days in which he started, he got to hit, and then we got to DH George Springer for Danny Jansen.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, think about that. Or even in a different scenario, maybe you want a very good defensive player, like a Gerard Dyson, playing center field, but you don't particularly wish his
bat to ever touch the ball.
His 197 ERA. Yeah.
Well, I just had assumed that was okay. And so for me, I mean, you just had... Imagine how much that would increase his value if that was allowed. For me, it's like, well, if that's not allowed, because it's not, in my mind, his value just went down.
Yeah.
Like, I thought this MVP race was like, yeah, no, he is really valuable because you can just have a DH in for anybody when he's pitching. And now that I realize you can't, it's like, oh, Shohei who?
Yeah, right. Scrap piece. Yeah.
I think the rule generally is dumb.
Yeah.
I don't know why you would tell any baseball team that you can have a DH, but he's only allowed for your pitcher.
Yeah.
Like, if you had a pitcher, or if you wanted to DH for someone else and make your pitcher hit, I don't know who is going to go out there and object and say, no, we don't want Robbie Ray hitting. That's illegal. Like, who's going to object? Other than Shohei Ohtani. So now there are 29 owners who would vote against that rule change.
Yeah, of course. Because the only one that advantage would be good to is the Anaheim Angels.
Yeah.
But anyways, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Look at this. Our first podcast side by side. We did it. All right. Yeah. Always appreciate everyone listening and tuning in, and this walk-off community that we have kind of created, and everyone that joins us on the live streams and in the Discord. It's just a ton of fun. So thank you very much. You can follow us on Twitter at Walk Off Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram, the Walk Off Podcast. Feel free to join our Discord.
There'll be a link to that down in the description of this video.
And again, we do our mailbag every Tuesday before the live stream. So if you have some comments or questions or anything like that, feel free to comment on the YouTube page. Subscriptions are always appreciated. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We'll see you on Tuesday, everybody. Enjoy.